Know your fucking American geography, people.
Rejoice, everyone. We're back with another Sekhie Reacts to Fate.
I have to say, we record these a few ahead. Altera just came out. I am loving the guessing games over who's coming after Altera, and we are definitely keeping this up. We seeded a hint into that video as well.
Alright, so this week we're doing Ivan the Terrible, or as Fate calls him, Ivan the Thunder Emperor, for a very specific reason.
It's funny that that's a very specific reason for Fate, because as far as I can tell, without knowing Fate's reason for it, that's actually just a fuck-up in translation. Which is actually quite common and relatively easy to make when translating from Russian, but it's still just incorrect.
Well, we'll get there when we get there. It was intentional on Fate's part, but it probably was because, the Japanese and their puns. They just did it in Russian.
True. I will say, though, obviously, for those of you who obviously know the Fate servant, it's Ivan the Thunder Emperor. For those of us like me who had to look up Ivan the Thunder Emperor with my mother and then be told that that was a mistranslation from Russian, it's Ivan the Terrible. Next to last Tsar of the Rurikid dynasty, destroyer of the Rurikid dynasty.
So, yeah.
And creator of my personal hell maze.
So just some quick background on Ivan, including the part about Sekhie's personal hell maze. Ivan was a devout follower of God, thus created a cathedral that became Sekhie's personal hell maze.
So it's called St. Basil's Basilica, but it's in the Red Square in Moscow. It's right across from the beheading circle, right across from the walls of the Kremlin, thus placed so that the emperors could look down upon the beheading circle from the walls of the Kremlin safely when shit's happening. Fun fact, it's good luck if you toss a coin into the beheading circle. But anyways, I've been to St. Basil 4 or 5 times now, and I swear to fucking God, 3 different times I got lost. It's not a big place. It looks really big from the outside, but it's one big middle room with a bunch of curving passageways around the outside, and as a child I just kept getting fucking lost.
I worry for you.
But for those of you who might not know St. Basil's Cathedral by name, it's the really famous Russian church with the onion domes in the multicolors, all in different sets of colors and shapes and designs. Let me pull up a picture real quick, because I don't know if Knick-Knack's seen a picture of it, but it's this one. Yeah. Very, very famous. I actually have a little Fabergé egg that opens to a little diorama of it, but what was I saying? So there's a fun story about the building of it, right? In that he hired this architect to build it, and this is pretty much, as far as historians can figure, entirely a myth. But according to myth, he had the architect blinded by poking his eyes out so that he would never build something as beautiful ever again in his lifetime. Although there is evidence that the name put down for the design of this building was then later put down in the design of a later period building. So there's really no substantial evidence to this, but it's actually a myth that's persisted into modern day with a lot of strength to it.
Well, Ivan, at least in myth and retold history, is a little bit well known for his brutality.
I mean, he was a bad person. Well, it was funny because he's known for being terrible, right? But for some intents and purposes, he was kind of the Tsar of the people.
Yeah.
I mean, he for as much as the Emperor of Russia, right, head of the Rurikid dynasty could be, he was kind of down with the patriarchy and the bourgeoisie, up with the peasants. In some ways. Honestly, though, a lot of historians think it was just because he didn't trust any of his fucking nobles, which is much more his speed. And then he murdered his son, who was supposed to be the next in line to the throne, leaving it to fall to his third son, who was weak-minded, feeble, and didn't have any political power. He died and then became the times of troubles in Russian history at the end of the Rurikid dynasty.
Yeah, Fate at least makes note that he was probably, he is considered the worst tyrant in Russia. That said, I know that title is always up for grabs, especially rather recently.
I don't know. Well, yeah, if we're talking talking about, in general, countries and
Russia's had a lot of
empires
tyrants. That's a little bit of a high bar there. Does Ivan really hit that in your opinion?
Yeah, and what's interesting is, right, so Ivan ruled when Russia was still ruled by the Grand Princes of Moscow. Technically, he was the first Tsar of all of Russia, but there was a point in history where there were the Princes of Moscow who actually reigned at times from Kiev in Ukraine, because Ukraine was the seat of power for a long time because it was closer to the rest of the Western countries and powers, and then the Princes of Moscow moved it to Moscow as like a seat of power, which is interesting.
So, needless to say, a lot of history sees Ivan as a monster, though.
Yeah.
Fate takes that a little bit literally. All right, let's go back here, because Ivan is not normal.
Well, all right, I will say, the things he is most famous for in his youth are the conquest of the Kazan and Astrakhan Khanates. Astrakhan? I asked Mom, and it's like Astrakhan or Astrakhan. Which, that's the thing he did. He was like, I'm going to conquer the Khanates that are still extant in the territory, which is why he became the Grand Tsar of all of Russia. That's where the phrase "of all of Russia" comes from. When they take all this territory from the Khanates at this point, and it just becomes part of Russia, and you get all of Russia, with Russia as like a really multinational, multi-ethnic place that spans several empires and areas of power in previous years.
So just getting into fate here, do you remember what the deal was with Sekhie?
Vaguely. That was one where... That was Sekhie post Ragnarok, where... Not post Ragnarok, but there was like a bunch of shit about like combining and like...
It was an alternate universe where Ragnarok
had already happened,
yeah,
and these were the people who'd kind of survived it, trying to like recreate shit.
The version of Ivan we have in Fate is from another one of those alternate timelines, similar to Sekhie.
Okay. Dare I ask how many alternate timelines there are?
Infinite in Fate, actually.
How many are described through different servants?
Do you want the technical one, or do you want as far as the terms we're using here?
Wow me.
Well, okay. This is your last warning. Do you really want me to, like...
It can't be worse than the DC Universe or the Marvel Universe.
You know how Fate Zero is a prequel to Fate Stay Night?
Yes.
Fate Zero is technically an alternate universe to Fate Stay Night.
Okay.
There is no real continuity in Fate.
Okay.
Every single entry is considered its own universe, to more or less to wave away plot holes. But this also means that even though you're seeing a servant appear, it is considered its own version of the servant that has minute character differences.
Huh. Okay.
It's a little bit trippy, but in Fate, Fate kind of works like, if you remember Loki, there was the one let uncontrolled, the timelines just kind of scatter really quickly.
Yeah.
Normally, when a timeline goes to absolute shit, or goes to a point where it's too utopian, to say it easiest, the timeline gets pruned, like in Loki, when it diverges from the main timeline.
Okay. That's
something that normally happens in Fate, albeit it allows for a lot more timelines than just the sacred timeline. What we're looking at with like Sekhie, and Ivan the Thunder Emperor are what's called a Lost Belt, which are a timeline that should have ended but didn't.
Okay.
Let's see. So I guess I'll get this. Yeah?
Fun fact. No relation to the character we've already done a video on, but Ivan IV's first wife was Anastasia Romanova.
So I'm not actually going to discuss it much in this video because that gets into spoilers for the plot.
Oh, is that related somehow?
But they do play around with that a little bit in the chapter he was introduced in.
I wanted to... So here's the thing, right? In Russian culture, there are there are certain names, right, that are very common. Like, there's a set of maybe, like, 10 or 12 names which have a female and male counterpart, and the Russian naming convention is you take your name and then the name of your father, right, as your, like, the name of your mother is your middle name and the name of your father is your last name, or however the line breaks down that way. So there's a lot of, like, you know, Grand Duchess Anastasia had 3 children, right, and they're Olga Anastasia, blank Anastasia, or something, or Tsar Nicholas, right? Like, all of his, like, Nicholas's son, right, was Alexei Nikolaevna, right, son of Nicholas, and that sort of thing. So, right, like, Ivan was Ivan Vasilievich, because he was the son of Vasilia III, right?
I guess that's a good point as any to give this little quick warning. Ivan, this video is going to contain some... I'm trying to try keeping the minor spoilers for the Anastasia chapter of Cosmos of the Lost Belt part, or FGO part 2. So just be warned if you're watching this and you haven't hit that part yet. So before I show you Ivan, because I kind of need to... If I showed you Ivan right now, it'd be a little bit... You'd be like, what? You'll still be like, what? But I feel like I should explain this first. Oh boy.
Oh dear. Oh
So,
dear. This can't... Okay, this cannot be as bad as some of the other shit you've given me.
I don't know. This is up there.
Plus, I swear to fucking God, the more I read about Ivan, like, in terms of, like, the actual historical figure, the more I was like, holy fuck, I have, like... You know, I am ridiculously related to this dude in the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon sort of way. Right? Because I've got the St. Peter's thing, right? St. Peter's was built, right, as a commemoration of taking back Kazan and the Kazan Kremlin.
Did you mean the,
Sorry, St. Basil's. God, it's because it's a basilica. God, fucking... I'm gonna go back through and just, like, bleep out every time I say St. Peter's. But St. Basil's, right, was built to commemorate the taking of Kazan and the Kazan Kremlin. And I've been to the Kazan Kremlin several times as well, which is notable for the fact that Kazan is actually named... Theoretically, it's one of the spots that Chinggis Khan stopped, right? During one of his conquests, and it's said that, like, one of his soldiers threw a bucket in the Kazan River and started yelling the word bucket, bucket, when he couldn't reach it, and I guess the Mongol word for bucket is close to Kazan, and therefore the city was named Kazan after bucket. And I've been to the Kazan Kremlin, and it's the site of, like, an actual archaeological dig having to do with Mongols, right, and Chinggis Khan and the Khanates and that sort of thing. So, like, the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I don't know. I feel like it could have other things happening, but, you know. Also, a lot of famous things in Russian history happened during... Like, Ivan the Terrible is famous for being Ivan the Terrible, right? But he's also, during his reign, was created, like, the first parliament of nobles in Russia. And, like, also... It was, like, the first of a lot of things happened during his reign that were... The first of, like, a lot of things happened during his reign, which is interesting. So, like... I mean, sure, he's terrible, but, you know, important to Russian history.
You're working off the assumption that Fate's going to go a little too hard into the terrible aspect.
I need something to make up for Altera.
I'm sorry, this is not it.
I need something to make up for Altera.
So in 1570, in this particular timeline, the world was struck by an asteroid that plunged the entire world into a massive global ice age that killed pretty much all life on the planet, outside of the Russians, those pesky bitches.
I mean, let's be honest here.
If anyone was going to survive an ice age, it still killed 90% of them, but 10% of all Russians, so the peak of the peak of Russians, probably the Siberians, actually,
yeah,
managed to survive that ice age.
Yeah.
But this is not a tenable situation. So, what's the best way I could put this? Should I show you Ivan first, or should I show you the Russians first?
Let's look at the Russians first. Let's see my people.
All right, you ready to see what became of your people?
Oh, speaking of, for those of you who've been keeping up with the hints in the previous video, the hints in the last video were in reference to the fact that I am part Russian, like very much, like very strongly, and I don't want to get political about it because nobody fucking supports what's happening right there, right now, in that area of the world. But I am Russian, and I am proud of that cultural heritage, if not the political heritage. That's not great. But that was the hint.
Tangent ages terribly and the war ends tomorrow before this ever gets edited.
I mean, honestly, fingers crossed, I'd love that. Knock on wood.
Meet the new Russian people. Furries.
I mean, here, right? So you say that, right? And you make it sound like I'm gonna be really like, what the fuck, right? But like, I'm pretty sure my neighbor had like 7 of those dogs. We had one of those.
Oh, it probably is actually based on some...
Well, it looks like it's based on wolves, but the thing is, like, you know, hunting dogs are just like a thing, right? Like, I had a neighbor who, in Russia, right, when I visited in the summer, who bred hunting dogs. And I remember, because I wasn't allowed to play with the puppies, because they had to train them to be vicious hunting dogs, which was really unfair, I thought, as a child, because I couldn't play with the fucking puppies. But also there were some really inhumane training methods to make them vicious hunting dogs, so that was super not cool.
But yeah, they fused themselves with the genetics of dogs or wolves in order to keep themselves alive in the cold.
I mean, it was either that or bears, and one is a pack animal and the other is not.
Yeah, even though they're a wolf, though, the way they live became very, very cutthroat.
I mean, wolves are too.
So are Russia. I'm kidding.
You're not wrong. You say you're kidding, but you're not wrong.
Some casual racism in the anime club. Alright, so now Ivan the Terrible. Because he didn't fuse with a wolf. No,
wait,
he had
I have
to
a question. What did they call these? Like, what did they call
the
themselves?
Yaga.
Yeah, I thought I saw that, as in Baba Yaga. So
That's probably
the reference.
Yagas.
Yeah. Yeah, because... So that's actually a common mispronunciation just in Western countries, because Russian phonetics, you put the emphasis on a different syllable, but in Russian it's Yaga, not Yaga.
That makes sense.
So it's probably a reference to Baba Yaga.
I'd have to assume, because this is all done through, like, Magecraft and such. And
I don't suppose there's a creepy chicken house with skeleton feet.
No, not yet.
Darn.
But yeah, no.
Darn.
That's, while we're mentioning the Yaga, the city names remain the same, pretty poor writingly wise. They just called them, like, Yaga Moscow. It's kind of lazy, but also... I mean, I know where we're at in the chapters. Alright, so Ivan the Terrible did not fuse himself with a wolf. He fused himself with a goddamn woolly
Frost
mammoth.
Giant? Oh, I was gonna say he kind of looks like a frost... I mean, I can't really see the zoomed in. You haven't shown me it up close. Okay.
Yeah, he fused with a woolly fucking mammoth.
See, I can see the woolly mammoth now, but it kind of looked like a frost giant from far away, which would have made sense.
Let me show you him in
fun fact, did you know that when Cleopatra was ruling, or not, I believe it's closer to Cleopatra ruling Egypt than Cleopatra from us today, woolly mammoths were still alive and living in parts of northern Russia and Siberia. And there are very, very recent frozen specimens of mammoths that have been found in the northern reaches of Russia, and they've managed to sequence DNA from them recently.
That's pretty much the explanation here, is that they got some of the DNA sequences and used that for this.
Yeah, like, I think that's so wild sometimes, thinking about, like, things in history that happened so close together. And the fact that, like, there was evidence of, like, living woolly mammoths closer to, like, Cleopatra than we are today is absolutely wild. Okay, well, that's just the coolest fucking thing ever.
And then, so this is actually only the head.
Yeah.
In the actual chapter itself, you cut this off and you fight this. At a certain point... For most of the chapter, he's like this. Just a giant-ass kaiju monster.
Dude, that's the coolest fucking thing. This is like Oliphant for the cold.
Yeah.
This is Mumakil for the cold. That's literally, even the horns look exactly like Mumakil with the chains hanging down. This is literally Mumakil, but for the cold. You know how people say, right? People talk about Lord of the Rings. They're like, oh, the Mumakil are just the robots on Hoth, right? This is if you combine the ice planet of Hoth with the Mumakil instead of the Battle of Pelennor Fields. Ice fields and Mumakil.
Unfortunately, I have zero desire to tell you or the audience how exactly you take down something like that. But
I mean, I can tell you how they did it in Lord of the Rings.
so yeah, let me grab
you know
the
what?
sprites.
This makes the line that still only counts as one even more applicable. Because you take down the head, but you still have to take down the body, but it's only one servant.
So he doesn't have. And there's his April Fools.
Oh! I want it so bad. It's so cute! Either way. Like, that's adorable! Dude, he's all fuzzy like a woolly mammoth. He would make the best fucking pet. That's a good doggo. That's a good doggo.
I don't think I've ever heard anyone describe Ivan the Terrible like that.
He's so cute! And fuzzy! In his other form. Am I just like... I don't think you expected me to go Mumakil.
No, I didn't.
And
That's
then
like
Hoth.
a brand new angle here. I mean, it's basically Hoth, but...
Yeah! Except Mumakil instead of robots.
It's like the Mumakil. They were actually in Hoth.
Yeah! Oliphants, my dudes! Oliphants!
So, by the time any of this becomes relevant to FGO's story, he became feared across what little was left of Russia, and the population was doing the best they could to not anger him.
I mean, that sounds legit. What class is he?
He's a writer.
Wait. You said that this is the head, right?
Yes.
And the rest is the body.
Well, the head is a functional body as well, but it rides the rest, or it's attached to the rest of the body most of the time.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. I was
Or at
like,
least
is this some sort of
when
like...
he was alive. As a servant, it's just the body, and then he can resummon the full woolly mammoth.
Oh, okay, because I was going to say, is this some sort of like centaur thing going on?
No.
Or like...
He's a rider because he rides his woolly mammoth body.
I mean, valid!
Alright.
This is awesome! You know who this is better than? This is better than Fergus.
Let's see. So, just as far as...
Yes. Also, I see a lot of funny Russian words in the fucking table of contents. Which is hilarious.
I'm sure there are.
Yeah, if you scroll back up to the table of contents, I was going to say, outside of the Anastasia thing. Yeah. I see the... Oh! Okay.
What?
So
the noble
didn't-
phantasms.
We didn't talk about the Oprichniki when we talked about the history, but that is actually related to the
Yes.
history of the real
We will
Ivan
be
the
talking
Fourth.
about them.
Okay.
So, Ivan has a couple abilities here I wanted to note.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is called Contradictory Mind.
Okay.
This allows him to just, on a whim, jump between being... So, all servants have alignments, like D&D alignments. Ivan can jump between being lawful evil and chaotic evil on a whim, basically.
Okay.
Probably in reference to the fact that he was cruel, while also being a good Christian boy.
I mean... You know...
And then his another ability I wanted to point out here is the Emergency Prerogative.
Yeah.
This skill allows Ivan to have a passive... Basically, it's a passive cause fear spell
Yeah.
in D&D.
Nice.
It becomes hard for others to stare at him, and they'll be dealt, like, just this extreme existential dread gazing upon him that will just completely demoralize them.
Yeah.
It's considered... It's kind of a counter to charisma, but a high enough charisma can counter it as well.
Also, I like that description of innocent monster.
Yeah, so have we discussed the Innocent Monster skill much?
No.
Okay, so the Innocent Monster skill is effectively... Whenever someone is sort of demonized by history when they weren't necessarily cruel, like Elizabeth Bathory,
Yeah.
they get classified as an innocent monster, which...
Well, see, it's funny, right? Because a lot of the tales, right, about Ivan as like this terrible, horrible person that everybody had to be deathly afraid of, derived from Western historians. I mean, there's no doubt that he was a terrible, like he was a person to be
But
feared.
also there were a lot of completely unnamed horrible tyrants across Europe and Asia.
Yeah, it's just he was this man who carried out these sackings and burnings and campaigns, and so he was feared across Europe for like his activism kind of in being
but
like
then
active.
That fear went from an actual fear to a he is the terrible, he is a cruel, bloody emperor.
Some of the during the Soviet era, a few of the leaders during the Soviet era tried to recommend him for sainthood, and the church was like, no. The Russian Orthodox Church was like, no.
Yeah. Although I don't know if this derives specifically from his life or if this derives more from his the way he differed from his life. I'm actually not sure.
No, I think that's actually fair because like obviously he did get the name like the fearsome, the terrible. Like he was called Ivan Grozny, or I think it's Grozny, which does translate to the formidable, the fearsome, the terrible, that kind of thing. But you know, I think a lot of times you hear Ivan the Terrible and you think of something very similar to Vlad Tepes. Like you think of a figure like Vlad.
But Vlad was another figure where it was like, over time, his legend got way overblown.
Yeah, but like you think of Ivan the Terrible, you think of people like Vlad the Impaler who impaled people and did all these horrendous things. Well, he couldn't possibly spend all his time doing that. I mean, he reigned for so many years. Like, you know, like sure he was terrible, but like, you know, things happened during his reign. Like,
it's just at a certain point it becomes hard to tell what's fact from fiction as far as the exaggerations go, and that's where a lot of these things come in.
Especially when you have different narratives from different historians at different parts in time.
Oftentimes in these kind of things there's a political skew to it as well.
Yeah, like the Soviets trying to make him a saint. And...
Like I like to think of a lot of the... Not all of them have innocent monsters, but a lot of Greek heroes are portrayed far differently than how they would have been back then, because one of the people renowned for retelling the Greek myths used it as a bit of a political angle against the Roman emperor, I believe.
I think so, yeah.
So you get a lot of stuff like that happening throughout history.
Yeah. All right, well, those three make sense.
So now for Noble Phantasms. The first one is, do you want to pronounce that for me?
Zveri Kresny Khod.
So this is just Ivan calling upon his mammoth form.
Yeah.
As a servant, this is just a temporary transformation, but this was his form in this Ivan's life. What up?
I'm sorry, the sentence. Whereas Surtur is a conceptual calamity, Ivan is a physical calamity.
Yeah, they do a lot of comparing the two when Surtur eventually shows up.
I mean, he just seems like an icy version of Surtur. So, you know.
No, like if you read that, you're going to see stuff involving like Mozart, Musashi.
Yeah.
It gets pretty nonsensical unless you actually experience it. I'm not going to let us linger too much on that.
No, that makes sense. So that's him summoning his mammoth.
Yeah.
So this is Chorny Oprichniki, which is based on the Oprichnina, which was the first unified police force in Russian history. Ivan employed 6,000 of what he called Oprichniki to be the first political force in the history of Russia, where and basically they directly controlled the portion of Russia that he directly ruled, not through boyars or nobles, but like the portion he was in direct control of was controlled by the Oprichniki, and the Oprichnina are not, you know, they weren't.
They controlled while he couldn't, or while in areas he didn't feel like.
Yeah, and
but they weren't exactly saints about it.
Yeah, they were disbanded relatively soon after they were created, because they were disbanded in 1572. But
so the way so I have a feeling something like this would appear under the normal Ivan as well. But as far as this Ivan goes, and it's interesting you brought up the fact that they ruled in places where Ivan really didn't pay much attention
Yeah,
to.
yeah. So that was the oprichnina, right? And
Yeah.
then this specifies oprichniki,
yeah.
and the oprichniki would have been the personal guard that was selected
Yeah.
from these 6,000. And originally it was 1,000 strong. Yeah.
So Ivan can only really use this while he's sleeping. So for the Yaga or the Yaga, the Russian people, they had to choose between fearing kaiju and fearing oppressive military force.
Well, and you know what's interesting is that anyone could be a member of the oprichniki, right? And anyone was eligible to apply to be part of Ivan's guard, whether they be nobles, townsmen, or peasants. However, they had to be free of commitments to the zemshchina, which was basically landed wealthy boyars and people who owned significant chunks of land and therefore had political stakes in Russian politics. So it was kind of open to, I mean, obviously it's in name, it's open to everyone, but obviously opportunity, it's easier for those who are richer on their own.
Equal opportunity is a myth.
Yeah.
They're all basically weak servants, though, as far as power goes, which is to say, you'd still get your ass handed to you by one.
Mm-hmm.
This is what they look like.
I like how, like, with the Yaga and the oprichniki, they've chosen, like, a very almost Soviet-era kind of Russian design for the way that their clothing and weapons look, when this is all happening historically in, like, 1560.
I mean, with these lost belts, for some of the ones that have contemporary areas, they don't downright say the connections, but there are in different places thematic like parallels to the places they're based on.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I love this design. Like, this is stunning. It's like an all-black version of like a typical Soviet military uniform, and you've got the fucking, it's almost like a plague mask in white sticking out. Like, that's so striking. Can you imagine one of these coming at you?
Yes.
That's right, you play the game. You've had these come at your characters.
They're also stronger the closer they get to Ivan. So
yeah.
That's just one last thing there. You don't want Ivan to be near Ivan when he's sleeping either.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
All right, let's show you the Fgo animation, though, which is the mammoth. I don't think it's... If I remember my Fgo NPs right, this one's not my favorite. I could be wrong. I actually have him in Fgo. I just haven't leveled him yet.
I mean, so far, I'm enjoying him a lot. He's great. Oh, that's so cool already. Third video chapter.
Just let a little animation play. Okay.
You always... Up!
I was trying.
I mean, he does kind of look like a frost giant.
A little bit.
Oh, that's the coolest thing ever! Oh my god, I want one!
And there's the thunder, by the way.
I want one. I want one so bad. I want one as a pet. Oh my god, that was fucking adorable. It was a murder mammoth. That was the cutest thing ever. It had a little pike axe on its fucking trunk. That was the cutest thing ever.
I don't know if I expected the word murder mammoth and adorable to ever be in the same sentence.
It was adorable! It had a murder pike!
Let's go take a look down here at these CDs.
It had a murder pike! That was the cutest. Oh my fucking god. Aww.
Are there CEs?
Are you on the right website?
Oh no, I'm on Game Press. What the
Yeah,
fuck?
I was wondering. You clicked into Game Press and I got real... That's Game Press again. Up.
There we go.
I was wondering because it was like real interesting. Close the ad. Okay. Nope.
Just want to see if that include. I guess you can see the sprites here a little closer.
Yeah, there's this little April Fools. It's so cute.
April's a little bit more up close.
He's such a chonky dude. He's such a chonky mammoth boy.
He's also a really big servant, even in his other form.
Oh, I want him. I want him in game. I want him so bad. He's like a better version of Herc, in my opinion. I mean, I don't know if that's true mechanics-wise, but like, you know.
All right, so let's start with this Bond CE here. The Library of Ivan. A library housing a collection of ancient wisdom, history, and secret arts. Its contents were collected from around the world. The library holds a mountain of treasure that an archaeologist would gladly pay a fortune to see, and that a mage would gladly give their life to possess.
Bitch, this is awesome! What the fuck?
I wish to save humans, to pray for them. I wish to lead a life full of love and knowledge. In service of that wish, let us collect as much knowledge as possible. At least, that was the Tsar's motive, but what? It's gone? We've collected so much? Honestly, what are those scholars doing?
No, but this is an actual thing. So there is the Lost Library of Ivan the Terrible. No, so it's called the Lost Library of the Moscow Tsars, or the Golden Library. The people think that it was first assembled by Ivan III, the Great of Russia, who reigned from 1460 to 1505. However, Ivan IV, Ivan the Terrible, is credited with its disappearance. It was thought to contain rare Greek, Latin, and Egyptian works from the libraries of Constantinople and Alexandria, as well as Chinese texts from the 2nd century CE. Supposedly it was beneath the Kremlin, and figures such as Peter the Great and Napoleon Bonaparte searched for it, as well as countless archaeologists. Like, this was one of the fun things I found when I looked up, like, this is the Russian version of the Library of Alexandria. Like, and it didn't burn down as far as we could tell. It just disappeared from history.
They just lost it. You just lose just as you do, you lose a fucking library.
Yeah, according to myth, right? The library was formed as part of the dowry of the second wife of Ivan III, and Ivan IV cursed it before he died, saying that anyone who came close to locating it would become blind and would never be able to find it. Like, this was a thing. Like, there are genuine archaeological treasure hunts for this throughout history. This is fucking awesome. I love this. I love him even more now.
Alright, before I show the rest of the CEs, just to get them on screen here, see if Sekhie can pick anything out, I wanted to give a hint to our next servant. So this one's by my picking, and Sekhie won't have any input in this at all. Nope. The fate work that our next servant comes from, we've actually given a whole lot of exposure to on this particular show for our channel.
Apparently.
Sekhie is none the wiser.
Yeah, like, what the fuck? I feel left out.
Alright. So we got Welcome to the Traveling Circus. Just includes a bunch of servants there.
Yeah.
Ivan probably in there somewhere. I think that's him in the background. Reading a book with my beloved child.
That's probably a reference to the relationship with either one of his children or the relationship he had with, like, his father or something. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean...
I've zero idea what this one actually looks like. Oh! Oh, there's Ivan.
Oh, that's adorable! See what I mean? I want one!
Let's see if I can get a closer look at some of the other ones here.
Yeah, just click into them and move me.
Hey, there's some we do know, like Valkyrie.
This is
got
the
MASH.
greatest show!
Yeah, basically, there's Scotty and more Valkyrie.
Oh!
More Valkyrie.
Somebody mentioned, by the way, that apparently the Valkyries are made from Altera.
Yeah, I saw that. I have no way of verifying that, because unfortunately, if a servant as big as Altera is and as lore important, there's a lot of shit that just, like, you have to have a hard time keeping track of.
Okay, I don't know who this guy wearing the conductor's uniform in, like, the right is, or the left, on the left is, but he looks like, oh, fuck, Greatest Showman. What's the name that played him? Wolverine.
Hugh Jackman?
He kind of looks like a young version of Hugh Jackman. Doesn't he?
Castor, Hugh Jackman. I'm kidding.
That looks like Castor Hugh Jackman.
We'll get to him eventually.
Oh,
But
now
there's
I really
Ivan
want
in
to
the
know who he
background
is.
there as the
Yeah.
elephant of the circus.
Now I really want to know who that is.
Actually, that's probably the best look you have as to how Ivan sits on the elephant's head. You can see him just kind of being a crown there.
Yeah. That's fucking amazing.
Alright, and this probably has some flavor text to it because it's the Valentine's CE.
Yeah. Oh. Oh.
Oh, it's just Ivan telling the player
Yeah.
character a bunch of folk tales.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you a bunch of Russian folktales. Most of them aren't pleasant, or at least they don't have pleasant endings. Or it's not that they don't have pleasant endings, it's just that the idea of a pleasant ending isn't necessary. Like, people die to make a happy ending, you know what I mean? Like, for example, right, last episode, Helena Blavatsky, we talked about the Snow Maidens, right? Snow Maidens have to die before they're taken by Father Frost. Like, most, like, is in the stories, Snow Maidens taken by Father Frost as, like, his granddaughters die from frostbite because their jealous stepmothers leave them out in the cold. And then he comes and claims them as his snow maidens. Like, sure, they end up as his snow maidens with piles of treasure, but also their stepmothers who raised them from like being small children left them to die in favor of their biological daughters. And they knew it. Like, they knew it. Like, these girls in the folktales, they know that their stepmother is putting them out to die, and they do it because they're dutiful daughters.
So,
And the fathers never stop them.
the next part I have written here, I think I wrote in preparation for you to absolutely hate Ivan, because it's like very like, well, this is, you can see this demonstration about how different Lost Belts can truly be. Skahak Scotty look pretty normal, but you get to Ivan and he's a fucking pachyderm. But no, you seem to really like Ivan.
Murder mammoth threw you?
Yeah, the cute murder mammoth threw me for a loop here.
Murder Mumakil, it's so cute!
Like, I end here in my notes just like stressing another Ivan the Terrible Servant probably does exist, and given infinite lifespan of this franchise, you probably will see it.
Well, here's the thing, right? So he's a writer in this form, right?
Yes.
But knowing the stories surrounding Ivan the Terrible, he could have also been a caster type because he did dabble in black magic. And that's one of the stories associated with the Library of Ivan. It's said that he tried to translate black magic texts from other countries.
You could definitely see that here, and he's the one that came up with the Magecraft Diffuse people. So.
Yeah, and then also, you could summon him as a ruler because he is a ruler, right?
Rulers work a little bit weirdly.
Well,
probably not. Yeah, no.
But, like, I could have guessed him as a ruler, theoretically, if you'd given me, like...
Rulers are weird. Rulers are typically limited to saints or true fate bullshit.
Some people did try to make him a saint.
Yes, you could make it that angle there, that they tried to make him a saint with the cathedral.
I also genuinely could have believed that he's a berserker like Vlad III. Like, you
given the terrible moniker.
Look, when I asked what class he was, it was because I first assumed that he was a berserker. Because he looks like a berserker. Let's be honest here. That looks like a berserker.
Yeah? You wouldn't think Ryder by looking at him.
No, you wouldn't. But that's because you don't see the giant murder mammoth.
You really love that giant murder mammoth.
I like large, fuzzy, deadly things.
All right, well... I think that just about does it for Ivan. Any last thoughts before we,
You know what? Unlike Attila, right, where I commented that I was kind of upset that they didn't include anything directly linking it to, like, Attila the Hun,
this one has a lot more of Ivan's DNA in it.
It does, and also the backstory with the Russian population becoming the Yaga, and the fact that this is an alternate universe, gives an excuse as to why perhaps the characters aren't wearing traditional Russian wear, or, like, behaving more kind of like as you would have expected if it was a purely historical figure in, like, a historical, like, something's historical happening, you know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't mind a more, like... I wouldn't mind, like, for example, right? If another Ivan the Terrible came out soon, let's say a caster, right? Black magic, and they did, like, the whole Princes of Moscow getup, because we know what that would have looked like in terms of clothing. Yeah, sure, I'd be like, holy shit, yeah, the costuming's great. But, like, this is acceptable.
Can I go ahead and offer you just a little... just as since Attila is fresh on our minds right now, something occurred to me that I didn't mention, partially because I was too in the moment of Sekhie is just brain dead now. Something to note about servants as they appear in Fate is you can have, as shown with things like Carmilla and Liz, you can have the mythologized interpretation alongside a more historically accurate interpretation. In Fate, when you look at Attila, now you're making the historically accurate version the actual bullshit one, while you could have the mythologized version, which still looks a little bit closer to what it could be. So you could, in theory, see a regular Attila in Fate as well.
Yeah, and I will say, right, so this is our third Russian servant. Because we covered Anastasia Nikolaevna Romanova, and then we covered Helena Blavatsky last week. Mm-hmm. Kudos if you got our hints to this being Ivan from the Helena video, because we did include hints. We have included hints for our next servant as well. Good luck. But honestly, I've been really pleased with all of the Russian servants so far. And what's interesting is I think that there's kind of a... I brought this up with one of my friends, but there is a genuine lack of knowledge about Russian history and folklore in the Western world. Like, when you buy a mythology book, right, with mythology from all over the world, it's going to give you Norse, it's going to give you Celtic, it's going to give you Egyptian, Greek, Roman, Native American, Chinese, South American, but there's never a section on Slavic mythology and history outside of maybe Ivan the Terrible, Catherine, who wasn't even Russian, Peter, and Baba Yaga, right? Like, that's really all that you're going to see. And so there's just like this complete lack of commonality of this knowledge. Like, everyone has read a book that's involved Greek or Roman or Egyptian mythology, but... Whereas
Fate be out here giving us very, very distinctly different Russian servants.
And actually doing a really good job sticking to, like, the historical context.
Even when making one of them a fucking pachyderm.
Like, look at, like, the fucking library, like, craft essence. That is, like, straight out of, like, Russian historical kind of, like, precedent. That's amazing. You know? The Chorne Oprichniki? Absolutely. Krasny Khod? 10 out of 10! 10 out of fucking 10!
Alright, well, I think that about covers it. We've now done Asia's hat, so do we want to sing out this video and sing in the next one?
Yes.
Oh, Canada.